We get to hear this week about Worthington Kilbourne High School and the construction updates on that side of the district.
So good evening, pleased to be back. We got another whole high school to talk about. This one is really part of the history of my career. When it was built in the early 90s, it was an AIA road trip for architects all over the state of Ohio. It was one of the preeminent and most unique high schools that was going up in that era. I think it accomplished what it set out to accomplish. My compliments to the architects, to the planners, and especially the stakeholders in this district. It's held its value, it's held its uniqueness, and in fact, we definitely looked at Kilbourne when we were thinking about the new Thomas in order to capture some of the same spirit that was in that building, including the large daylight open student commons, the connection to the site, the investment in the site. And so I think it's a building that it's due for its refresh, but it's not really due for a wholesale change because it was a really phenomenal high school when it was built. So we're here with the same kind of good news. We're on schedule. We're under budget. We're ready to get started. We think we've worked through lots of the issues. Nikki, you brought up the issue of how can we improve the site. We took that on just as seriously here as we did at Thomas. There are some limitations, what I'll show you tonight, but I think we've done a really good job of improving the chances for the operational impact on the site to be really good. So there are 7 pages in the scope document that talks about all the things that are being done. I tried to boil it down to these bullet points. There are some serious restarts with program areas. We're not just renovating science labs, we're gutting that part of the building and we're starting over from scratch with science lab design. We are doing that with restrooms. At students' request and teachers' request, we are recapturing some locker-based space to convert into other space. We thought we were just refreshing the kitchen with new finishes and some new equipment, and we really started over, and we're doing a whole new kitchen, and Brian Hunt had a lot to do with that. We're doing deep full technical infrastructure upgrades everywhere. The entire building is going to have upgrades. The HVAC system, there's these things called victolic connections, which is the water piping that connects in a certain way. Those connections haven't been the best performers over long term. We're fixing all of those. We're replacing most of the roof. We are working on all of the roof as an alternate because we didn't imagine the whole roof would need to be replaced as we got into this, but we have an option for that. We're getting an all-new generator, all new technology throughout the building, and all new security systems. Full finish upgrades. This is something we didn't necessarily get to in all 4 of the middle schools. When we did those, we are touching every surface and every finish in Kilbourne High School. It will be like new. It will be new. So it's a full finish upgrade throughout. New ceilings, new lighting, new walls, new paint, new flooring. And that's not just some places, that's every place, which is great. I talked about the site circulation attempts. We are also bringing the Memorial Walkway back here, much like we did at Thomas. And then there's some additions. We weren't sure about additions when we started, but we realized that as we brought Thomas up to the common standards and we looked at the school design manual, that fine arts was deficient at Thomas, but it was also deficient at Kilbourne. So we are doing an addition for fine arts, not only to bring it up to standards, but also to bring it up to the same standard as Thomas. Same goes for athletics. Our weight room at Thomas was a little bit bigger, so we're bringing the weight room at Kilbourne up to that size. We're repurposing the old wrestling room and creating a new wrestling room, and you'll see some really interesting pictures of that. And then we're moving teacher prep into a larger place in the building, but we recaptured their space for some new classroom locations, which we think is a plus. And the thing I'm most excited about, especially here, especially with this site, especially with the ravine and the view, is we're doing the outdoor common area. That started at Kilbourne. It was from teachers and students in the November 21 meeting. They remembered that during the pandemic, they set up some outdoor areas for students to gather, and they thought that was great, and they wanted to permanently make that part of how we were going to think of the future of Kilbourne. So you'll see an example of that tonight. So this is the plan. It's the early plan. This was my plan before Vicki got a hold of it and started doing everything to everywhere in the building. But the point of this image is I have the same diagram, which I'll show you after Randy speaks, that talks about the same kind of continuums in this school that we created at Thomas. The athletic to the fine arts north-south axis. But the most important is We moved the office, we moved the media center so we could have that same exact student experience continuum from outdoor space to large-scale indoor space to smaller scale indoor space to very private indoor space. And that continuum exists through the new design and the new renovations at this building. We have a couple outdoor projects that we've already completed. The outdoor concession building field house on the visitor side and the north side of the stadium. This is great. Nobody, I think, imagined how much difference this would make to teams and practice and times getting the athletic turf field here for folks to practice on. I think it's getting great use already, and I think additional fields are in our future just because this has proven to be such a great investment and really beautiful. Same as Thomas, the lacrosse wall. I think Randy's going to show you about the locations. And then there's been some miscellaneous landscape tune-ups around the building. This is the memorial walkway that's out by the student entrance at the northwest corner of the school. This is at the stadium entrance. We're fixing some pavers, some planter areas, a little bit of things that you'll see, I think, if I have the right, yeah, at this level. Just, again, tune-ups and cleanups so that this, again, outside looks new and freshed up, just like the inside. And then a really cool idea at the athletic entrance to the auxiliary gym was to lower the wall there so that people could actually sit on it as a place to gather instead of having it so high that it was just like a bar height wall. And so I think that's a really cool idea. It just takes a little bit of modification of the existing wall. And some things behind the stadium, again, to bring a little green in and to do a little fresh up of the outdoor facilities. So this is the site plan. You think that Thomas was intimidating. This one is even a little more intimidating. We have a railroad on one side. We have a highway on the south side. We have developed neighborhoods on the east side, and we have Hard Road, which has got a lot of traffic. And then we have this great thing. We have this huge ravine that deals with this site. It was the greatest strength, I think, and the most interesting, unique thing about the original design is how to deal with it, how to engage it in the building, and how to make it a plus. It's also a great challenge because if you look on the west side between where the ravine starts and the railroad starts, there's a tiny little sliver of space for us to get through. We have added traffic lanes in that little space, and Randy's going to talk about it. And we think we've got ideas where we can actually have traffic slip in and slip out for big events, but also on a daily basis. We've dealt with traffic in some pretty unique ways. It's all you, sir.
Thank you. So I'm going to cover the impact that it's going to have on our community and our students through construction. But before I get to that, Mike mentioned the building. When Kilbourne was designed, the plans were drawn in 1989. And I'm told during that time, there was a feeling in the community where it was the school that was new and the school that was old. There were the haves and the have-nots. Our plans and our efforts of this entire team have been to try to avoid those things and instead duplicate the positive features of both schools across the site. So you're going to see several examples of that. But on this slide, one of the things that I'd like to point out is unlike Thomas Worthington that has a parking lot in the center of their property, Mike showed that we have a ravine in the center of this property and a building, which our study showed that the back half of Kilbourne High School was underutilized in comparison with Thomas Worthington in the flats. So one of our great challenges was how to increase the usage of all of those fields in the back so that they had more of the experience like they did at Thomas. You'll see the new turf field, which is in the bottom of this drawing. It has a red dot on it. But what I would like to point out is next to that turfed field is a grass field that also has lights. So with just two simple additional poles, we were able to illuminate a second grass field to increase usage in that area. Also, you'll see at the top of that page a red dot on the parking lot. That parking lot's going to be increased in size to increase our capacity for visitors to this area of the site. And then there's the paved cart path, which will provide walking access to the back. And then the third dot that's kind of in the middle of the page, that's where the lacrosse wall currently sits. But we're excited about this. And again, it's just one example of us taking something positive that's at one school and trying to transfer that to the other. Much like last time we presented, we showed you the cafeteria design for Thomas Worthington. That was us trying to duplicate the very positive feature at Kilbourne High School and bring it to the students at Thomas. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Moving forward, one of the challenges that we began to tackle was taking a look at traffic and how traffic flowed on the site. Mike mentioned that we are widening the path to behind the building to 3 lanes. This was done primarily because of large events. When you're trying to exit the property, there seems to be a bottleneck right there. So having 3 lanes where we can bring multiple lanes from the back of the building at the same time, obviously with some traffic control assistance, will certainly help. But also during the school day, that red circle there kind of shows where cars get slowed down, and sometimes that slowdown increases traffic on hard roads. So we're hoping to increase efficiency on that red circle. One thing before I move beyond this, I would say to the right, so you can see just part of that parking lot in the top right corner of this slide, that's where Russilli will use as their laydown area. That's where their construction trailer will be housed, far away from the student parking lot, over to the opposite side, and actually on the side of the building where we will eventually do additions to the site. So that's just a little bit about the impact of the front lawn. The field will be open throughout construction, that front field, and we will be able to maintain that. This zooms in a little bit to show you some of our efforts in front of the school. We're, again, trying to efficiently get cars off of hard road, safely load and unload buses, trying to continue to provide a parking option and obviously preserve the field. You will notice that buses will be able to stack 3 across, kind of in a diagonal fashion. Cars will still be able to parallel park, but they'll be parking closer to the band field, further away from the school. And there'll actually be 2 lanes of flow through for parent drop-off traffic, which will increase our efficiency there. And students will be able to safely cross there in the middle, where we always have staff on duty in the morning. So without really drastic changes, the staff at Kilbourne High School feel like this is going to make a difference, improve efficiency, and get cars in and out effectively. So those are the changes and how it will impact the front. I do want to point this out. The original schedule called for 3 independent summer projects for the entire Kilbourne building. And it was really a series of events that caused us to question that approach. The team from Shore and Associates actually walked the building. And so Mike mentioned this, but Tony was pointing out every little, concrete block that had to be replaced, flooring that he wasn't going to allow the building to open if it looked like that. And just every room they visited and went through. And when we found the whole scope of the project, we did ask the question, how much money could we save if instead of having a startup, a stop, startup, and a stop, if we just made this a continuous project and kept people on site and tried to work around it. So we avoided those stops, and we also avoided some cost escalation. And we really feel like it's added some scope to the project because we took this approach. Now, there will be some disruption for students on the inside, a little more, but we're pretty confident that this will be minor compared to the project at Thomas. So I'll point that out to you. This is the upper level. And when you look at these next 2 slides, it's important that you look at them independently. So they kind of go stage 1 through 5 upstairs. For the most part, the upstairs will be dealt with first. Now, you may ask, how do you start by tearing science rooms up when you don't have extra space? Well, we're going to actually create some swing space. So I'll explain this document by starting with the pink area on the diagram, which shows the balcony in the gymnasium. So we're talking about the main gym, the balcony with the home side bleachers. Those bleachers were due to be removed as part of this project. We're going to remove them early and create some swing space, if you will. That space will be used for multiple things throughout the phases, but the first thing it will be used for is a teacher workspace. Their space is currently the orange island in the middle of this diagram. So because they're vacating that space, it allows us to have some swing space. And then in the yellow diagram, many of you have had meetings in that diagonal room. I know Nikki was there for our feeder pattern room. That yellow space will be recreated in the library temporarily as they begin this work upstairs. So we're freeing up some space upstairs by utilizing the library and the gymnasium, and they will begin with the science labs in just a few weeks. They'll be working on recreating the science labs. And then they're going to move basically in a clockwise direction. So they'll go from orange to blue to green down to yellow, and then finish up with that pink area. Moving to the first floor, again, this then starts a kind of a new clock. They're going to tackle the green area first. So at this point, the whole entire upper floor should be complete. And then they'll move down to the main floor, working on those areas. This is when the office will be finished in the green. And then a large section of this project was the gymnasium, the auditorium, and the new library. Mike's going to show you some pictures of that. And then the last stage of the project is the dark orange, which are 3 additions to the building that will have huge impact on how the site is utilized. I'll let Mike finish and then answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Randy.
So this is that diagram, and again, I refer to it just to get us to start talking about the building in full, and this is very, very exciting. And again, this whole concept of outdoor student commons, it started in November at Kilbourne. We certainly carried it to Thomas, and there was no pushback from anyone there. But the students brought this up, and then the teachers piled on. They said this would be fantastic opportunities for us in terms of, one, connecting to the ravine, to nature, because you can see it, but you can't actually get out there with it. There's no way out of this wall in the current school. And so this is, I think, one of the most exciting new programming pieces of the new Kilbourne. And then as you get inside, where it used to be the offices, we are, again, getting more and more granular in terms of the student experience. You go from the big space to the sort of interior cafe type space, and then along the back wall, that's the existing courtyard in the middle of the school. Those are breakout rooms for small groups of kids. And so there is, very small group places to get very quiet, and there are very large group places to be less quiet. And again, we think, given the furniture, the rooms, the orientation, the opportunities for inside and outside, that every student can find their space to thrive in this kind of environment. Again, just 2 weeks ago, we talked about this same exact thing at Thomas. And again, Thomas was informed by what we hope to accomplish at Kilbourne. And it has the same sort of space breakdown from the media center to the large group commons to the outdoor space. And those large windows and that green space and that contained area out there very much came from the impression of standing in the student commons at Kilbourne. So this is the detailed plan, and it talks about departments and areas and colors. And again, what you will see is there's no place on this plan that doesn't have a color in it, meaning there's no place on this plan where there isn't work planned. I really like the idea, and Eric and Erica really like the idea of actually taking this on as a continuous project. We will be surgical about closing off the science wing as we work through it. And Eric has found places to have science classrooms. They've even found things they can do in their curriculum that don't require the lab space during that period of time. So we are being very thoughtful and very forward and intentional in terms of how we work with the school, the staff, and the people that plan the building to make that work. This is our color palette. It's substantially easier without the Thomas red in it. So it becomes easier to control and easier to work. You can see the blue is a dominant feature, but it is just the accent color. It's the wolf's blue, but the rest of the colors are warm woods and neutral grays. And so we're very excited about how easy this was. And we've got floor patterns and finish patterns planned for the entire building. Even the gym floors are getting replaced. So again, no surface untouched. This is a model of the outside of the building, and it's interesting that it shows all 3 of the new additions. Again, we started this project without a firm belief that there had to be new square footage. But you can see in the foreground there, 4,000 square feet, 4,400 square feet, and a new band room, a new music addition. In the middle of the building, you can see the bridge, the porch out of the student commons, and at the back corner, under the gable of the auxiliary gym, you can see where we have expanded weight room, expanded storage, and have a new wrestling room so we could recapture our existing wrestling room. So all of the new construction of this building is on the west. That's a coincidence, but it's all shown by this picture. And the driveways in front, it's a little like an airport terminal if you're at John Glenn, but there are 3 lanes for buses to queue up in, 2 lanes for parents to queue up in, and another lane for people to park. if they have to come in. So as Randy said, we're not going to push traffic out on Hard Road because we have lots and lots of space to stage people. And I think that's a huge improvement to what's going to happen in the front of the school. This is the band room addition, just clearly to say we're copying the architectural details and reticulation exactly as it is. We are not trying to make it different. We are trying to make it blend in as if it was part of the building in 1990. Already touched on that. There's the pictures of the inspiration pictures we got from our landscape architect. Again, very excited about what's going to happen here. As you get inside, again, all new finishes, all new lighting. This is probably the most normal picture view of the more traditional kinds of low-level seating, the typical kind of cafeteria seating. But as you look around the room, you're going to see these larger high spaces, very much, like we call them salad bars in our office, where we can all stand around. If you're sitting on a stool or if you're standing and having a conversation, you're eye to eye. And it has a much different feel in terms of traffic and movement through the space. And again, a really cool thing, doors to the outside from what always just used to be a view of the green. Looking the north, there's a new cafe that's on the opposite side of the serving line. One of the things we'll talk about when we get to food service is extending the period of time that kids can get nutritious things and not from vending machines. And that's part of that idea. You can see standing height tables in the foreground here. Looking a little closer, you can see the stair that's in there. But again, you can see the view outside, but also the variations of tables and furniture that are going to occur in this space. And then now if you turn around, we have completely made transparent the relationship between the student commons and the media center. So where there were a handful of doors and windows now that go into the offices and the guidance area, this is all very transparent floor to ceiling. It's going to feel like one contiguous space outside to outside in terms of the daylight. And then as you get inside the media center, the first layer is still kind of cafe-like. It's still got high tables. It's still got hard surface floors. We're not making the policy about where food, where coffee, where drinks go, but we're saying that it's not a hard division. It's a division you can work out as a school. So the first layer, the first sort of depth of the media center from the cafeteria is one kind of flooring and furniture. And then as you turn into the deeper part, you can see computers, you can see the high workstations again, you can see the soft furniture. And again, can't say it enough, those breakout rooms are a big deal when students can do things in there independently. Classrooms. We're not reconfiguring many classrooms, although where the teacher work areas are along the hallway, we are getting 8 new classrooms with new windows to the outside, and the 8 classrooms that were without daylight in the middle of the building, that's going to become the new teacher workspace. So we are making the handful of classrooms in this building that didn't have natural light, that's going away. Again, every surface in every classroom, every piece of furniture, new lighting, new ceilings, new whiteboards, new technology, it's complete. The configuration and location of rooms doesn't change much, but the finishes and details change a lot. The old media center entrance is now the administrative area. It's right at the front of the school. It's next to student services. We think there's a relationship that is positive there. We needed the media center to be next to the student commons. So even though there was a relationship there that I think was positive for administration, this is a good opportunity. And it's been redone completely, and all of the layout of all the guidance, psych, principals, assistant principals, all of it is in this space. And again, we've kept the daylight as complete as we can in this whole space. But the entire old media center is becoming the entire new administration. This one I totally give to students. It was their idea that the number of lockers in the school was not necessary. What we picked up in terms of traffic flow was great, but if you look at those 2 rooms on the left, those were formerly those blue bays of lockers. Those are breakout rooms that are in this part of the building. And so students gain space by saying that they don't all need or use the lockers at the same density as they used to. And even at corners, what used to be traffic jams because they were filled with lockers, now there's some more breakout high table space where students can gather in a more informal setting. All new finishes and a massive upgrade in lighting and sound in the auditorium. It and the Thomas Auditorium, which again is borrowing from, I think, a lot of the success of the layout and the sight lines of the Kilbourne Auditorium. they're going to be very similar and, again, very much equal in terms of their capabilities and technology. New band room. Thomas's band room was 2,000 square feet. Kilbourne's band room was 3,000 square feet. Today, and according to the design manual for a school for 1,800 students, they should be 4,000 square feet. So they both are now. This is the addition on Kilbourne. It's a brand new band room. You can see the storage capabilities around. The band director also noted that those cases being all the way around the room do wonderful things for just the diffusion of sound. And so we have sound absorption in this room, but we have a lot of sound diffusion in this room because of those instrument cases that create that space. Very high, so flags and rifles could actually practice in here. This is the kind of space that we were hoping to achieve, and we did at both Thomas and Kilbourne, dramatically different from the current spaces that they've been in. I thought kitchen and food service was paint up, fix up, but after our consultant, Rotano Design, got involved with Brian, they brought a lot more ideas to the table. Lengthen in servant hours, versatile concepts, healthier options, good stuff. And this is stuff that's happening in high schools and universities all over the country. And so those ideas meant that we started from scratch and we redesigned the kitchen with all new equipment, but with all new layouts. So there's grab and go, there's serving options, there's flex areas, all this opportunity to redo. And again, same thing happened at Thomas because we were in a new place. But we have the old kitchen space, but we have an all-new kitchen in that space. And again, lots of ideas that are coming out, lots of opportunities for different kinds of serving and different kind of options. And the coolest, and again, both high schools, there is a deli that is open much longer than the cafeteria kitchen is open. And so there'll be some opportunities for before school and after school healthy choices for kids. Gym, changing, all new bleachers, much greater spacing, both in sight lines and knee room. The current gyms at both Thomas and Kilbourne were very tight. There's no way that the number of butts that you could count in seat numbers would ever reach the number of people that could sit there, because if I were in one of those seats, my knees would be taking up the seat left of me and the seat right of me because they were 22-inch space. Now we're at a much greater space, better sight lines, again, all new finishes. We're very excited to see how this will serve both schools. And both schools are existing gyms that are getting all new seating. This is cool. It's not a very exciting space. It's empty. It's the front part of this image is the weight room at Kilbourne. But one thing that you'll notice if you've ever been in the weight room at Kilbourne is none of those windows are there. One of the things that the Kilbourne folks, when they saw our design for Thomas, was, look at all that daylight. That would be great. And so we are doing that. We're adding those windows, creating that daylight, creating some additional space here that allows us to make both weight rooms very, very nice opportunities and very nice environments. This is my favorite thing. This is the old wrestling room. It's big enough for one mat. After we finished the Thomas Fieldhouse with the team room in it, again, people viewed it and thought, this is great. Can we do this at Kilbourne? And this is, in fact, what we did. So this old wrestling room is now the team room. There's a big garage door that opens up out to the stadium. There's a large space here. This is a 100-seat kind of lecture room, but it's also an opportunity for all kinds of things related to athletics and the athletic part of the building. And then again, it's in a perfect location, and it gives us all kinds of flexibility in terms of daytime use, but also for athletic events. And again, it's just like Thomas. So the last thing we had to really think about was, as we decided to create this super back-to-back kind of race through the building in terms of the construction, we also needed to do that in terms of the furniture delivery. So instead of getting $2 million worth of furniture in one delivery during the first phase of the science rooms, we have all the furniture sort of packed up and coming into the same exact sequence of the classroom work. So just in time, right on time, we're going to load the science room with new furniture, then go on to the next phase, and that phase will get loaded with new furniture right when it needs it. And so we have that all figured out, and it's complex, but again, nothing is as complex as Thomas, so we're feeling pretty good here. And the last thing is we're resetting all the signage to the ADA standards, to the tech size standards, to the toilet room identification standards, and to the new WK logo standards. So the whole building will have all new signage from top to bottom. So, another exciting project.
Absolutely.
questions that you have.
Fantastic. Kelly, do you want to start us off this time since we started down the other end the last time?
Hold on. Again, I said last time, first of all, thank you. I really do appreciate that breaking it down. I appreciate that Thomas was first, then, not in any order, but to take all of this in at one time is a lot. So again, I would probably go back and listen to this recording just like I did with Thomas. And I don't have as many questions, I don't think, regarding this one. I'm looking at my notes here. There were a couple slides that were different than what we have on our agenda.
We got a few updates this last day, yeah.
So that was just, which I appreciate. So let me look at my notes here. The teacher's workspace, the final space is a space that's not going to have windows.
Correct.
So we're adding classrooms that are going to have windows. The
Right.
weight room is going to have windows.
Right.
But the teacher's workspace is not.
Well,
gonna
we
have
talked about it with teachers, and they said if I'm teaching all day in a classroom and I'm going to my desk in the teacher work area for a period or for half a period, I'd much rather have that be the space where I'm not having the daylight versus
Okay.
my classroom. So it is something I wouldn't do in a brand new school. There's no place like that at Thomas, but there's 8 classrooms buried in the middle of the building. It was very efficient at the time. It's right in that front part of the building. And instead of being English and social studies classrooms, it's now teacher work area. It's a wide open space. It has high ceilings. It'll feel nice, but it won't have daylight.
Okay.
And there's nothing we can do about that. And we made that trade based on teachers telling us they'd rather have it in their classrooms than their work area.
And that's what's most important. You mentioned the addition, and I love how you talked about how it's just going to blend. Because when we look at Thomas and how it's just,
Yeah.
you can see the additions. And so I'm grateful that will be just like a smooth transition. And
Nobody should know where it
look
starts and where it ends.
I think that's all. I may have another question. Oh, the traffic flow. So Randy, you talked about that a little bit and talked about expanding that, and which I would appreciate from coming off Hard Road, like as I have to drive through 2 school zones for both high schools in the morning. Where are we taking that space from to add those extra lanes? Are we moving into the grass part?
We're moving just a little bit, but not enough that we won't be able to fit a full-size field there.
Okay.
So I don't know, is it about 8 feet?
Yeah, and we took out some of the middle space and we pushed even a little bit toward the building because that's all a new curb and a sidewalk. So we stole just a little from everywhere so that we could get it balanced, but we were told that the band field staying there was a non-negotiable, so we made sure that happened.
I'm sure. I just appreciate it. I have been in that back parking lot trying to get to the front and out many times. So I'm sure that will be helpful in the morning and after school and, of course, after events. I think that's all I have for now that I can think of. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Amber, would you like to go next?
This is all so exciting. Thank you so much for
Good.
walking us through that. It just looks beautiful. And I had never thought about making Thomas and Kilbourne kind of complement one another, but I think that's, really, really great that you all had that foresight to sort of make them, complementary.
Not only was it foresight, we had orders from the top.
Well, that's great. I love that. The traffic thing, yeah. I guess I was hoping to see another exit as a mom who spent hours of her life in that, traffic lane trying to get to and from the school. There's really no option though, right? You've
Right.
got the railroad tracks, you've got
Right, we looked at those.
270.
And for a football game, I think you need a traffic control person at that intersection where the circle is, because they can let 2 lanes flow for a long time and go all the way out to Hard Road. Before then, they let people in, and before then, the student parking lot empties. But during a regular school day, there's going to be stop signs there, and there's going to be enough traffic that people can line up in pairs instead of one at a time. So we'll double the throughput of that when there's no one there, and I think we'll triple the throughput when there's a traffic control person there.
Well, maybe that will
And
help
again,
then.
it'll be great.
Just a couple questions I have. I don't really have a whole lot of questions on this either. It's very clear and self-explanatory, but the auditorium size, you said that there were new lights, new sound systems. any changes to seating, or is it still the same capacity?
We might have a couple seats out where there needs to be handicap parking spaces, but it's pretty much exactly as built, the original.
Okay.
And we pretty much copied Thomas off of Kilbourne.
And I love the addition of all the natural light and the lockers thing. I have 2 teenagers who go to Kilbourne, so neither of them have a locker.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that? Do you know why the students don't use them?
Well, and we toured Upper Arlington, and they put in 100 lockers. We still have probably 300 in the school. Students don't need them unless they have like a violin or an athletic bag where they have to, to get rid of some of their stuff.
Right. But there are band lockers, there are athletic. Or
Yeah,
a lot
music.
of the
There are
teams
music
have-
lockers. There are athletic lockers. So the student said, that would be enough for us. The people who use them, who want them, can have them. What Upper Arlington does is they just have daytime combinations on them. You put your stuff in like you do at an airport, or not anymore at an airport, but you used to do, and you leave it in there for the day, and then you take it home, and then you pick a different locker the next day.
Okay. I think that's all I had. Yeah, just thank you. Thank you for all your work on this.
Thanks, Amber. Stephanie, would you like to go next?
Yes, and the benefit of going later, your questions are already answered. Thank you very much. It's beautiful. It really is. It's beautiful. I just have one kind of, probably I'm an old stick in the mud question about the lockers. I accept that they are not using lockers today, but I don't know that that's necessarily the trend that we go in another 10 or 15 years. So I think to the extent that we can just have that in the back of our mind so that if we need to shove some more in there, we can. I think that would be beneficial because, it's just, 15 years ago,
Correct.
we would have never said we can
Who knew?
eliminate lockers, right?
And we could be
So-
wrong. Chromebooks are changed a lot about
Yeah,
size
absolutely.
of stuff you carry. So
Absolutely.
I think
Yeah.
that's a big part of
Sure.
why we're not seeing them today, but who knows what happens 15 or 20 years. You're right.
Right. That was really it. I had traffic questions. Those were answered. I appreciate that you're being, the phrase was surgeon-like? With
Surgical, yep.
Yes, science classrooms, because I know that's the one place where you have to have stuff in the room, right? So
Right.
I guess my only ask is that we just monitor that and make sure if we get behind schedule, we still have Plan B. But that's it. I'm sure that's already on the plan. So thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of my questions have already been asked. We're all kind of on the same page, but thank you. It was great to see all the pictures. As far as the teacher workroom in the non-window space, which I think the students will really like that because my kids did not like being in the non-window classrooms, but is their space about the same as what they have now or more or?
The teacher workspace is a fix. It's one for one. We created some additional classrooms out of old locker-based space or old lab space we weren't using, and the new classrooms that go along the window wall, they will all be 850. They'll all be at the new size, so they'll be larger end of the classrooms in the school. But it was pretty much of an even swap. It just was swapping daylight for no daylight.
Okay. Schedule. I think you probably said it and I didn't write it down. I know it was supposed to be over 3 summers, but what is the timeline now?
So we're going to start, guys, spring? Yeah, we're going to start in spring and we're not going to stop, but we're going to move our tiny little construction area from place to place to place. The great thing about that is right away, we'll be back into new science labs because that's the first thing that happens and the first thing that's finished. So Eric's already figuring out when those folks go back to their science rooms, now he's got more swing space for the math rooms that we're going to take offline next. And so there's a tiny little displacement that occurs, but right away, you're back in new space. You're not waiting 3 years to see the new finished building. You're waiting just for the first summer in the fall. This fall, we'll have brand new science labs open.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Excellent. Most of mine, obviously, I'll just say has also been addressed. But I will echo the appreciation for the fact that you guys are duplicating positive features, standards, all the benefits at both of our high schools. So that's a huge benefit to the entire community. Also want to express gratitude for the fact that you identified the fact that if you kept this a continuous project versus the starts and stops. It sounded like you had some significant savings
Yes.
there, which allowed us to expand our scope, which is
Correct.
obviously very beneficial. Can you talk just a little bit about LEED certification? I think we addressed that with
Well,
Thomas
I have to
last
backtrack
time.
because I told you last week or 2 weeks ago that Thomas was not going after the LEED credential, and in fact is going after the LEED credential. We registered Thomas with the Green Building Council. It's easily into LEED points, green or LEED silver points now. We could even see, some possibility of LEED gold. But the existing infrastructure at Kilbourne being mostly a renovation, there's a couple of prerequisites that we miss. And so what I said 2 weeks ago was correct for Kilbourne, but it was incorrect for Thomas.
Gotcha.
So we are doing all the same things. We're doing all the same strategies. We're doing, as much green as we can for both buildings. But Thomas is officially in the LEED registry and officially is on track for LEED silver minimum. Kilbourne is going to match all of that to the degree it can, but it couldn't meet all of the prerequisites that required it to meet the registration standard. So we're
Okay.
going after the similar things, but Kilbourne won't officially be a LEED registered building.
Thanks for that clarification. Does that lead to any other questions? Are you guys comfortable with that? Go ahead, Kelly.
I was just wondering if there was a reason why Kilbourne and why Thomas and not Kilbourne, like what was missing?
Thomas is a new building. It's easy to find, it's easy to orient things for the least sun gain. It's easy to put brand new high efficiency mechanical systems in. It's easy to change or put in new ductwork. There is some existing infrastructure at Kilbourne we can't change. It's
Gotcha.
existing, we're not replacing it. And it causes us to miss on a couple of the prerequisites in the LEED certification.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
A lot of the schools in Ohio, if they're more than 50% renovation, it's really hard to get into LEED. If they're more than 50% new, it's pretty easy to get them registered.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Mike.
Thank you.
Really appreciative of the work that's being done.